If January had a vibe, it would be financial hangover. Between the drinks, the food, and all the holiday gifts, our bank accounts are begging for a little hydration. Enter Mint Mobile. They're here to help you cut back on one of the most annoying monthly expenses, overpriced wireless. Mint Mobile's end-of-year sale is still going on, but only into the end of the month, with 50% off 3, 6, and 12 months of unlimited premium wireless. That means high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, all on the nation's largest 5G network, without big wireless's bloated plans and mystery charges. You keep your phone, your number, and your contacts, just way more money in your pocket. January Reset Slade. Personally, we are so excited that Mint Mobile is now our sponsor so we can have better service and save so much money this year. Thank you, Mint Mobile. So join us. This January, quit overspending on wireless with 50% off unlimited premium wireless. Plans start at $15 a month at mintmobile.com/culty. That's mintmobile.com/culty. Limited time offer. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast, we break down the shame and secrets that make these experiences so destructive with honest conversations on how seemingly benign groups can cross into the cultiverse and how to spot and recover from trouble if it happens to you.
Each week, we bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/alittleBitCulty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty. Today's guest is Priya Hutner, a woman who spent decades inside the Kashi Ashram, a spiritual community led by a woman named Joya and later Ma, a Brooklyn-born guru who went from selling hot goods with her Italian husband to building a Hindu-leaning empire complete with fire rituals, ego deaths, and a strict celibacy policy that didn't exactly hold up. Ma could apparently take you into deep meditation 1 minute and then publicly eviscerate you the next in front of hundreds, all the while advocating for people with AIDS and insisting her students eat a diet of only almond roca to cure cancer because, karma.
Priya's story starts like a lot of cult stories do. Parents deep into transcendental meditation, a move to Florida at 17 while pregnant, and a guru who convinced her that if she didn't dedicate her life to enlightenment right now, she'd end up reincarnated as something really undesirable.
For context, Ma had previously been teaching with Ram Dass, yes, that Ram Dass, until their messy breakup in the mid-70s.
In the first part, Priya walks us through the life inside Kashi, the fire rituals, the $20 a week stipend, the nightly darshans, and the bizarre intersection of genuine compassion and absolute control. We talk about ego death as public humiliation, arbitrary celibacy enforcement, wearing your spiritual beat down like a badge of honor, and how easy it is to ignore red flags when you've convinced yourself enlightenment is just around the corner.
Priya's fascinating memoir, Chasing Nirvana, chronicles her journey from devoted follower to burned-out community leader, the profound experiences that kept her there, and the slow unraveling that finally pushed her out.
Here's our story with Priya Hutner.
Priya, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Thank you. Nice to finally see you guys live.
Yes, we are excited.
Oh, how exciting.
Excited because this is it's a group in an ashram we have not covered. And not only that, there's so many intersecting stories of your journey with other big groups, other big gurus of the time, right? In the 70s and 80s?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I was a kid and I was brought in by my parents. But throughout my whole time on the ashram, I met like all of these different, spiritual teachers and gurus and leaders. And it was one of the more interesting things that occurred was that my worldview was big. I had a fairly large worldview, but I think that happened over time. As I kind of got older in the community and my role changed, one of my jobs was to bring Ma, the guru, and connect her with the world. So that was one of my jobs. So that kind of was a very interesting and unique opportunity for me in the scene.
Right. This would have been at a time when there was no controversy around people like Yogi Bhajan and Father Yod, or there was some controversy.
Or was buried.
But this is before Me Too.
We lived in a really small town in Florida, in Central Florida. And as Ma was becoming, more well-known, we also had, there was Waco happening and Koresh and the Ruby Ridge thing and all those things going on. And I think we met Yogi Bhajan in it was late 90s, early 2000s. So, there was always something that seems that there was around these other teachers. There was always some sort of, it felt like there's always drama around every spiritual teacher.
That's very true.
Every guru had drama, it felt like. But so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what it felt like. It felt like there were always the underpinnings. And of course, if you're in a group and you think you're it, you're the group, you always look at there was always these other little things that you were looking at to say, oh, I'm not sure I would fall for that,
Right.
I would be part of that.
And they're easier to dismiss until it's undeniable.
Right.
So there's a lot of that going on before. Even when I first did my first training, it was that's weird. But I had enough friends that could dismiss it and I trusted. There's a lot of that atmosphere around these people.
Yeah, those of us that are in a group, we, initially think our group is the best group and we know the answers.
Yes. I dropped that at the beginning so that our audience will be excited to learn more about where Yogi Bhajan and Ram Dass and Arlo Guthrie fit into the story. But let's go back a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your parents when you were a kid. What were they into and how did they hear about this woman? What's your origin story?
So, living in the suburbs of Philadelphia, my father was not happy with his job and, a corporate job, a tax accountant, and he started searching. And we started with transcendental meditation. And at that point, I think I was 12 when they asked me if I wanted to learn how to meditate. And I was like, sure, why not? What did I know? I was a 12-year-old kid. I was like, well, my parents are doing it. Why not? So we did that. And then along the way for his searching, he was looking for all different kinds of jobs and places to live. Somebody at a health food store told him about Joya. She was Joya then, before she became Ma. And my mom and dad started going to New York to go to her classes. And this was after the Ram Dass breakup, too, by the way. She met, I'll segue, but Ma and Ram Dass were together, I guess, in the mid-70s, right? So this was after, my parents met her after what we called the breakup. So eventually they became so enamored that, they quit their jobs and we all moved to New York and lived in these communal houses. And Ma used to teach in these lofts in the city. And, we would all there were hundreds and hundreds of people.
Wow.
It was quite the scene back then. And that was around the same time she moved to Florida and started to create something in Florida. Her students bought her a piece of land there. And my mother moved. She asked my mother to move with her soon after. And then my brother moved. And I was in New York with my dad. And, one thing led to another. I was a wild child. I was...
You were unsupervised.
Unsupervised teenager, just, let loose in the city. And, my friends all knew I was part of this very unique, strange scene. They'd come into my house and people would be meditating in the living room. And I'd be like, just go upstairs to my bedroom, and we would be dropping LSD in the ashram, upstairs and partying while everybody else was meditating. But eventually my father moved down there and then I got pregnant and I ended up moving down there to have my son.
And just to back up for a second, for those who don't know, can you just explain who Ram Dass was? Is he still alive? He's not, right? Or is he?
No, Ram Dass, I've met him several times. Ram Dass is a renowned spiritual teacher. He was an icon, and he and Ma had connected and they were teaching together in New York, and then it ended and it didn't go well. But he continued. He was out here in California for years and years. He and Ma bumped into each other at the Parliament of World's Religions. I think it was some interreligious interfaith conference, and many years later, but right before he had his stroke. Yeah, so he was a very well-respected spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
And my dad, after my dad left the teaching, after Ma's teaching, he moved to New Mexico, and he and Ram Dass became very good friends. So I had met him several times. He was always definitely arm's length because I was one of Ma's students.
The reason I want to bring up Ram Dass is just like all the intersections of these different cults that we've covered. So many other groups have talked about how like their spiritual journey started with Be Here Now, which is one of his main books. He kind of, if people aren't familiar with his work, I would say he was kind of like Eckhart Tolle, but like 2 decades prior.
And drugs.
Right. Well, the whole Timothy Leary and LSD and all that, Harvard professors. But yeah, for sure.
What was their conflict? Do you know, or is it public knowledge?
Well, he wrote about it in a book called Grist for the Mill. I think he decided that she wasn't who she said she was, maybe. Again, I was a kid and it was sort of, before my time. But yeah, and it wasn't pretty. It was definitely a difficult departure. And it would come up throughout the years,
You moved to Florida.
Right. I moved to Florida.
To have your baby.
Have my baby.
At 17. We'll just remember that.
Basically, just about.
Yeah.
I was, right on 17 or 18. And Mom married me to the father of the child. And then he didn't want to be there. So we moved back to New York. And I lived in New York for several years. And then I got pregnant again. I was very young and innocent. I don't know. And then eventually moved back to the ashram with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And, Ma had said to me, hey, you're in your 20s and before you know it, you'll be in your 30s, your 40s. And before you know that, your life will pass you by and you will never see God or find God or be enlightened. And I was like, okay, I packed everything up. I left my boyfriend who I really loved and moved back to Florida. And I remained there for many years.
And then your mom was down there too.
Oh yeah, she's still there.
Okay.
She's still
My
there.
mother still lives there. My brother lives there. Ma has since, she died after I moved out to California.
Before we get into that, let's go back a little bit. How old were you when you met her, and what did you think of her? Like, just describe Ma for us.
I remember my parents driving us to New York to meet her, and I was probably 14. And, we walked into this house in Queens, and there were just hundreds of people there. And everybody was swathed in white and, had malas on and, incense was burning. And, I was a kid from Northeast Philly. I was just like, okay, I've just landed on another planet. And she came out, and this was early on, and she had long black hair, and she had thick eyelashes on, and, gold bangles up her arms, and she was tan, and she had a very thick Brooklyn accent. And she was fearless. She was take no prisoners even back then. And I think as she got older and more comfortable, she was definitely one of the more outrageous people that I have ever met.
Wow.
Loud, brash, just said what was on her mind. She also had the ability to take you into a very deep meditation. It was like kind of this really interesting juxtaposition of who she was.
Where did she learn that from? Do you know?
Well, she told us she grew up on the streets of Brooklyn and she was very poor. This was her backstory. And She had an Italian husband and sold hot goods. And so when she was in the process of trying to lose weight. Her husband told her she was fat, and she was trying to lose weight, and she started doing breath work at a Jack LaLanne. And from there, that she said that she had a vision of Christ, and that started her journey of seeking. So that was baseline story of how she got to be,
enlightened,
who she
Jack
was.
LaLanne.
Jack LaLanne. And then from there, eventually Neem Karoli Baba, who is Ram Dass's guru, came to her, and she, he told her, Christ told her to teach always, and Neem Karoli Baba told her to feed everyone. And from there, she changed from Joya to Ma and became the guru.
So that was like a conscious decision for her to sort of change identities and become somebody else.
Rebrand herself.
We rebranded.
That's
Yes.
kind of what it is.
We rebranded several times on the ashram because it had a very, I would say, Hindu leaning, right? It had very much the ritual and the deities, and Kali was very much the embodiment. Ma embodied that Kali energy of, you have to free yourself from attachments and kill the ego. And so that was all part of this evolution. And eventually what happened was when people started seeing us and accusing us of being a cult, we became an interfaith community. So we were embracing everything. So that was kind of like a part of the rebranding as well.
Let's take a break from the cultiverse, shall we? Here's a word from our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Every January, we're told it's time for a new you. New habits, new body, new personality. But what if 2026 isn't about becoming someone new, but instead putting some stuff down? Because honestly, a lot of us already carry enough. Feeling lighter doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means letting go of stories, expectations, resentment, or anxiety that's been hitching a ride for way too long. That's where therapy can be incredibly helpful. Personally, I'm letting go of pressure to perform. And Sarah is letting go of stress and rushing around. And she's going to focus on balance. We shall see. For me, therapy has always been a way for me to really look at what's been weighing me down and get an unbiased perspective on what's actually worth carrying into the new year. Signing up for therapy can feel like a small step, but it can open up so much space for clarity, calm, and whatever you want for 2026 to hold. BetterHelp makes it easy. They match you with a fully licensed therapist using a quick questionnaire, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch anytime. With over 30,000 therapists, millions of people helped, and an average 4.9 out of 5 rating, it clearly works. So maybe this year isn't about chasing into you. Maybe it's about finally feeling a little lighter. You can't step into a lighter version of yourself without leaving behind what's been weighing you down. Therapy can help you clear space. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty.
People, it's a fish. The new year is here, and it's the perfect excuse to give our home and our kids' rooms a 2026 level upgrade with Wayfair. From bunk beds and fun decor that almost get them excited to clean their rooms to fresh bedding and rugs, it's an easy reset to get everybody back on track. Wayfair also has everything for an all-around home refresh. Decor to make your living room feel cozy again, storage solutions for every corner, and organizers for bathrooms, toys, and even that mystery stuff closet. In our case, it's actually a drawer, but everyone's got one. Plus, you can grab kitchen essentials that make weeknight dinners less chaotic and more. We got this. And set up legit podcast from home spaces with desks, office chairs, and bookcases. With Wayfair's huge selection, it's ridiculously easy to find pieces that fit your style, budget, and life. We actually just got the best new bed for Ace with storage underneath, because you can only imagine how many monster trucks that kid has. The quality was fantastic, and it was super easy to assemble. I love that I can easily find things that the kids love and that work with my boho chic home style. I also have now officially found homes for every room in our house, even the podcast studio. So, get organized, refreshed, back on track this year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. We all know that sleep is basically magic for our skin, our mood, and our immune system. Actually, our entire personality, honestly. But winding down at night, that's another story. My brain is still scrolling. My body's tired but wired, and suddenly it's midnight and I'm negotiating with myself. That's why Osea's Dream Collection has completely changed my nighttime routine. After my hot Epsom salt bath, I bring in Osea's Dream Collection. This helps me settle in for the night and helps makes my skin feel nurtured because guess what? Skincare is self-care. Their Dream Night Serum and Dream Night Cream are clinically tested and powered by bioretinol to help reduce the visible effects of stress while you sleep. I'm talking dryness, dullness, fine lines, and that I'm exhausted look. Gone. It feels like giving my skin permission to rest, and I wake up looking noticeably more hydrated, smoother, and firmer. And then there's the Dream Bioretinol Body Serum, which I'm officially obsessed with. It's a full-body overnight treatment with bioretinol, red seaweed, magnesium, and lavender. So it visibly firms and smooths without the irritation of traditional retinol. And it actually helps your body relax. You put it on, you breathe it in, and your whole system just exhales. Give your skin a rest with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners. Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code CULTY at OseaMalibu.com. Thank you so much for being our sponsor, Osea. We are so glad to have you here. Enjoy.
Escape's over. Let's return to our regularly scheduled cult talk. Well, I look at a lot of these movements and a lot of these, they have to appeal to people. So there has to have a certain element of marketing. And when everything else out there is informed by marketing, you can't just ignore it and expect to be successful in whatever it is, regardless if it has merit or it's a grift or whatever. You have to do some sort of marketing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, in the 90s, she started working with people with AIDS and taking care of the dying and embracing the gay and lesbian transgender community. And that was another thing that she was very compassionate in that place. She took care of people.
Do you think it was authentic?
Yeah,
okay.
I do.
Right.
I actually think that was authentic. I'd been at the bedside of a lot of people who were dying and a lot of people who were taken care of and embraced by her. So yeah, I do think that was the authentic. And like with any of these groups, teachers, I think there's some thread of truth and authenticity as well as, absolute power corrupts absolutely at some point. Right. I mean, that kind of, again, it was part of, to me, the evolution and my own awakening somewhere.
It's a duality.
I totally agree. Like they talk about it in politics. It's like, are you going to use the office to serve you or are you going to use the office to serve the people? And I think politicians can be guilty of both. That's a very diplomatic take. Right. Yeah. Some are all about like, what can this do for me? But it is any position of power, right?
And it can start somewhere and end somewhere else. And it seems like it started at a time in the 70s where, I mean, every transcendental meditation, we've covered that here on the podcast. We could probably do more, actually, because there's lots of stories there. But that's where your father started. Then he meets Joya. She
Hold
turns
my beer. We'll be hearing from them.
Yes. It turns into Ma. You go down to the ashram. For those who are totally unfamiliar with the world, I think we'll get a lot out of your book because you really paint the picture of what that life is like. Can you give our listeners a sense of a day in the life in the ashram? What was initially meaningful to you? What was your life like that kept you there? What was good about it?
I think when I moved back, I was still had my New York on. I still had a lot of that. But as, I didn't want to wear sarongs or ram shawls or dress like, a monk. And there was a lot of really kind of awesome ritual. You would sit in front of the fire and you'd have an opportunity to give up the things you didn't want with throwing rice in the fire and meditations that were extremely deep. And it's interesting because you kind of balance that. I've had these experiences, right? These spiritual experiences, these big awakenings early on. And that I think that helps to seal some of or a lot of the belief system, right? I eventually worked for the ashram. I had a job down in Florida, and then I eventually was hired to work for the ashram. And we were called supported people. So I would get up and go to the office and work and do whatever I had to do. But we had darshan every night with Ma. So it was like a class where she would, teach, meditate. And, we had a community dinner every night at 5:00, and you had to hurry up and eat because you had to be at class. And initially it was 7 days a week she was teaching. So, it was very much you were meditating and practicing and chanting. And then she offered her, her discourse or her teaching. So that was kind of like what our days were. And at different times we were, we had a lot of guests. We had a lot of people come and visit us. And, I was in charge of having to take care of them. And especially if they were
Famous.
important VIPs.
Right. You're constantly working.
I was constantly working. And, that was kind of the rhythm of the scene. There were the people that worked out in the community who helped, they paid rent and they helped to create the support system financially. And then there were the group of us who worked for the ashram, and we had a school. So there were the teachers that worked for the school, and we were all given a small stipend and it was really small. I think it started out at like $20 a week. Yeah, it was really small. There never seemed to be enough money, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And as we evolved, there was more yoga. There was, I co-founded the retreat center so that people could come and do workshops and things like that. And that changed. And a lot of people would come. And then we had satellite ashrams, right? So there was Atlanta, there was New York, there was LA, so we had all these satellite ashrams, and we would travel to the different places and Ma would teach.
So curious where it was here in Atlanta.
Little 5 Points?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it was Kashi, Atlanta. It just kind of, I think, blew up and ended, went down, not literal flames, but just big breakup there. And so that it no longer exists.
And everyone in the different satellites, they all called it Kashi? Like I'm a member of Kashi, or I go to Kashi, like that?
Kashi, New York, Kashi, Atlanta, Kashi, LA. Yeah.
So I know that the rebranding of the direction of the group changed and Ma's focus changed, but what were some of the through lines of the belief system overall? You've mentioned non-attachment and killing of the ego, but what was the goal? What did you think you were signing up for in terms of what you were getting?
Liberation, man. I thought I was gonna be enlightened and somehow I would be different. I thought that now I look back and think, I didn't even know what that meant. What did that mean? What is enlightenment? And, hence the chasing Nirvana.
Right.
But it was this pull to be something greater than self, to be connected to something greater than self. And she was the catalyst for that. She was the conduit. I'll help you with your all the karma. And, it was always a card that was pulled too. If you were in trouble, it was like, hey, this is not good for your karma, kind of thing. Or now I have to take care of your karma. And, that reinforcement, of course, makes you think, oh, if I'm not doing this won't happen, and we see those through lines in many different other teachings and religions, even, that if you don't abide by this, then this is going to happen.
You're going to hell, usually.
Right? Or come back up the ass of a cockroach or something like that. That was one of her lines, and you were like, what? But that you would actually reincarnate where you left off. And so those teachings held us accountable, I guess. Those, this finding God or being that if we freed ourselves from the worldly attachments and the whole ego death thing was brutal because you could be outed in the middle of hundreds of people.
Tell us what ego death was. What did it mean to get killed or decimate the ego?
What did it mean to get killed? It meant that you, in some way, an infraction of some sort, right? Or that there was some part of your being that needed to die in order to be more freer, a better human, more spiritual, whatever you also could get killed for being familiar, like having familiarity or disrespecting the guru or, they're all different layers to, why one would be killed. I mean, we were a celibate teaching.
Right.
And that really didn't work out so well for many of us. But
Imagine
Too late.
It was like, I said to a friend the other day, I said, well, we didn't have like this sexual abuse thing. And he looked at me and said, Priya, you out of your mind? You were sexually repressed. You were supposed to be brahmachari or celibate. And he's like, it was all about control and repression. And I'm like, yeah, I guess
Some
so.
more to unwind there.
Well, that was one of the things, when I was reading, it kind of felt like some of these things were arbitrary. When you felt like Ma processed people, did she have like a loose structure, or was it just kind of arbitrary based on what she was seeing in the moment and felt like, oh, this is how I could... It felt like discipline. Like all these things feel like disciplining and getting you to be obedient. And it feels arbitrary at times.
Yes.
Right?
Sometimes I think it's arbitrary. Sometimes you end up feeling like, you see somebody say something or do something and it was disrespectful, right?
Yeah,
it was
abusive.
like, my God, I can't believe that person just said that. It would have been disrespectful to anybody, anywhere.
Right. They're going to get killed for that. Yes.
Yeah, I watched. Yeah. And then there was, people who might have students that might have slept with each other. And, and that would be, you're chasing women in gold, or you're chasing something that isn't going to serve you in the greater good.
This episode would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. Let's hear what they have to offer.
I hate organizing finances on my own. My life is hectic and I need help. All the help I can get. Do you know how many subscriptions we're doubling up on or weren't even using at all? Way too many. That's where Rocket Money has saved the day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has been huge for Sarah and I. We've gotten a clear handle on our finances without making it a whole thing. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights and easy-to-read reports, and even real-time alerts for big transactions, upcoming bills, refunds, or when your balance is getting a little too low for comfort. I love not having to monitor my accounts because I get notifications when things come in and out. Everything from checking, savings, loans, and investments lives in one clean dashboard, so you actually know what's going on with your money. It's the kind of clarity that makes you feel calmer instead of more stressed. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/culty. That's rocketmoney.com/culty. rocketmoney.com/culty.
Here's the harsh truth nobody wants to hear. You can spend all the money on serums and potions and lotions, but if your cells are stressed and dehydrated, your skin is never going to have that glow. So this year, I'm skipping the broken resolutions and committing to the internal fix that my skin has been begging for. The secret is a powerful 2-part solution. 1 to fight inflammation and 1 to support deep cellular hydration. That's why I love Peak's Radiant Skin Duo. Matcha plus electrolytes, working together to transform your skin from the inside out. Sun Goddess Matcha is my morning reset button. Ceremonial grade, grown in volcanic soil, packed with chlorophyll, EGCG, and L-theanine to calm my stress, because we all know I have that, and literally turn the glow switch back on. Then there's BT Fountain, which is luxury hydration, not a sports drink, designed to deeply replenish cells and rehydrate your complexion all day long. Together, less puffiness, brighter tone, fewer flare-ups, and that plump, dewy, what are you doing differently kind of glow. This isn't just energy, it's a skin reset. So commit to intentional health. Unlock 20% off and establish your powerful foundation for sustained well-being at peaklife.com/culty. That's PIQUE life.com/culty. This is hydration redefined. Try it and glow from the inside out. Did you skip over all the ads? We hope you didn't. Thank you to our sponsors and thank you for listening. Now, let's resume our culty combo. We didn't talk about getting killed or decimating the ego, but it was just called feedback. Like somebody would say, may I offer you some feedback? Or you just get the feedback.
Oh, God.
And it was always very painful. And I wrote down this note from when I read your book, because for those people who are listening who've never been in a cult, might not understand what it feels like. And you gave a metaphor that was so accurate for what it feels like to give feedback. And it was It's a little bit like having the lights shone on you from a car while you're taking a pee on the side of the road or something like that. That's what it feels like. You're like, you're so
Right?
exposed. It's so vulnerable. You're like just get busted.
I did that to you one time. I think I
You
that to
did. He did. He turned the lights on while I was trying to take a pee in the dark. Thanks, Nippy.
You're welcome.
I thought you were talking about sharing your getting feedback in NXIVM.
Here to help.
No, that's another story.
And then the rest of the community would pull back.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like the Scarlet Letter.
Because they don't want to get killed too.
Well,
It sends a message to everyone else.
Right. But then there was this flip that happened where people would wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, they're working through their shit.
Right. And that they were important and it was important. And it just depended what level of death you were experiencing, I think. It really was. I got put into the monks group. We had monks, right? I get put in and then I got thrown out. I got thrown out because she decided I was phony. So I was like, devastated. And then I was like, fine, I'm out. And, it was like this push-pull of craziness that would happen. Some of it made absolutely no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you would just be like, I don't get it. I don't get what's happening.
And in those moments, I don't know if you caught this in the book, Nip, that I felt was very accurate and I resonated with is like, you don't know what's happening, but you also have the voice in your head that's like getting you to stay on the path because you don't know what's happening. There must be an opportunity for a learning and you better stick around to figure it out versus like, I'm reading your book going, get out, like just fucking leave, But no, you stay.
Yeah, I mean,
you stay.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to be self-indulgent. You were supposed to be selfless in service, and all of those things were going to lead to connecting with source or liberation or God or whatever we wanted to call. We had lots of gods. So it was, the one, so, and you don't know until you know.
Yeah. Like what were some of the things that you recognized in hindsight as red flags that you had normalized, do you think?
I felt like I had wherewithal, even when I was there, that I had some sort of semblance of self, which is why she put me in a position of power, which is why she led me to be the CEO of the community eventually. Definitely. And fearless and, able to communicate with people well. And I think that as we moved forward, you'd see her behavior was a red flag,
Like what?
All the time or as she got older?
Well, I would probably say it was always there. But like, say we went to a religious gathering. She was an advocate for people with AIDS. So she would be pushing that agenda, which was, it felt like an important agenda. But she was so loud and so brash. And you were just like, oh my God, this is not the way to handle this situation. We're not going to run into the Dalai Lama and, start pushing him around kind of thing. These things were like, it was intense and she was intense. And so, it's funny because I write it in the book, but it's also something I've heard people say on your podcast and I've heard other people say it. You put these little things on our shelves, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be able to say, you don't want to see it. And yet it was like she would be praying for somebody, but watching CNN. Like you're just like, wait a minute, you're not really doing that. What are you doing? But she would say, I am taking care of the world. So you just saw these little things that started to pop.
Right.
But I think it really started before, like the slow burn for me was toward the end of my tenure when it really started feeling like nothing made sense.
And before we get to that, there's a few little stories I was hoping you'd share. Can you tell our audience about the almond roca?
Oh, Jesus. My son, was sick. And, of course, when you live in a spiritual community like we did, there was all these, we were naturopathic, we were healthy, and, there are all these different multi-level marketing things that would come into our world. You'd be doing Calorat and super blue green algae and, the aromatherapy, and you'd be doing it all because it was going to save you. And my son got sick. He got cancer. And Ma had this guy, Dr. Versendahl, who is no longer on the planet, but he was the founder of Standard Process Supplements. And he came to the ashram, and he was a chiropractor. So he laid my son on the table and started working with him. And he said, I really think, now I'm in the throes of a parent that has a son with cancer. He's like, I think he needs some oils. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we doing? Flax? What are we doing? What kind of oils are we going to do? And he said, no, he needs almond roca.
What?
I lost my shit. I was like, first of all, I had him on this strict diet of no sugar, no white anything, no processed food, all organic. We were doing everything to sort out the disease. And I just was like, I get up and I walked out and I walked to my mother and I said, that guy is insane if he thinks I'm giving my son almond roca. And somehow we were called into her rooms and she's like, so he wants you to give your son almond roca, you better do it. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. It's sugar. I'm not doing it. It's karma. You have to do it. I'm working. I'm doing the puja. I'm saving his life. You need to give him almond roca. So I made him take the littlest bite and I said, spit it out. And I said, thank you. And we're done. And that was the almond roca story.
I love it.
But, this kind of stuff happened all the time. We eating all kinds of crazy stuff. Like you think about diets, clothing that we had to wear, all the things. And you're like, but the diet thing was insane. Yep. But part of it stemmed also from her origins, right? With being overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So we were always on a diet.
Interesting.
It was
That's
really
another
interesting.
through line. Every time I visited Albany, the women were always on a different diet.
Food is the ultimate
control.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was interesting. And, and we, there were all these exercise machines and I'd have to go and buy the exercise machines. And then I'd have to call the exercise company and make sure that we knew exactly how long she needed to be on the exercise machine. I haven't thought of that in ages, but the people from Pilates thought I was insane. I'd be calling them up and how long should she be on it? I'm like, I don't know. How long should she be on it?
How much almond roca should I eat while on the elliptical to have maximum calorie burn?
He had her on diet peach schnapps. It was like some sort of iced tea drink kind of thing.
Snapple.
It was diet peach Snapple. And we're like, you can't, it was just like he had her on this crazy stuff. And you were like, I don't get it.
Do you remember when Lauren was eating like those white square crackers and to lose weight? And I was like, that's...
It's one way to do it.
What was it?
Like those little...
Like a rice cracker?
No, those square... I forgot what they're called. They're just like really basic white crackers.
Saltines?
Saltines, yes. Saltines. And I just was
that's real healthy.
So not healthy. Anyway, let's come back in part 2 and find out what were the final red flags that ultimately caused you to leave. And I have a note here about a yoga video, but I can't remember if that was that one of the things?
It was part of it. Yeah, it was part of that.
It was one of the things on the shelf?
Yoga video?
Part of the thing on the shelf.
Right.
Yeah, Arlo's wife, Jackie, was supposed to be doing that video.
Okay, we'll come back for part 2 and hear about Arlo Guthrie, his wife, the yoga video, an Ayurvedic healing session, and everything that made the shelf crumble. Part 2 on Thursday with Priya Hutner.
Ma will see you now.
Ma will see you now. Okay, everybody, we're going to pause there. Please come back on Thursday for part 2 with Priya.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Dinsmore.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.